I've chosen a scene from A Very Natural Thing, which is a film made in 1974 in America by a guy called Christopher Larkin, and it's marketed as the first gay film made by a gay man to receive national distribution, which is rather an odd first, but it's one it holds. And it's a very, very, I really like this film, and it's a very dated film. It was made at the tail end of Gay Lib and in America. And it tells the story of a man who leaves the priesthood to go to the Big Apple and have a gay old time of it there. And there he meets another guy, and they start a very torrid love affair. And at the beginning of the love scenes they share together, it's very melodramatic. Their first sex scene is by a fireplace, and they're playing very sort of hysteric string, beautiful sort of soft focus music, and it's slightly laughable. And when I first saw the film, I thought this was very odd. And then I read more about the film and found out this was made as a response to Love Story, the 1970 romance. So that scene, at least, could be kind of read as a parody of heterosexual representation of love on screen. But that's not the scene I've chosen from the film. The scene I've chosen is right at the end of the film. And our hero has found love in the arms of another guy who wants the same things as he does from a relationship. And to celebrate this glorious triumph, he and his partner rush naked into the sea and start frolicking around in the foam. And they run in slow motion, and they're both naked at the time. And it goes on for about 3 minutes of them slowly jogging and then frolicking in the sea. And when I first saw the film, I thought, oh my God, this scene's going on for too long. It's slightly embarrassing. The music's very soupy and syrupy. And nonetheless, I really love the scene. I think it works in the space of the film because it's very sincere and it's very open and it's very celebratory, and the directors mean it. And though it's cheesy and it's sentimental and slightly toe-curling perhaps for today's audiences, it's so earnest and so heartfelt that I really, really love it. So I've chosen that as a scene to talk about.
And what was the audience reaction at the time for gay audiences? What did they feel about the film?
This came I think 3 or 4 years after The Boys in the Sand, which was The Boys in the Band. The Boys in the Sand's a porn film. The Boys in the Band, which had just received a lot of criticism for very miserable gay characters. So in that sense, it had good reviews. But because the gay man is seen as rejecting, or our hero anyway is seen as rejecting free love, which is a very important part of Gay Lib at the time, it was seen as being a bit conformist and a bit safe, perhaps. And since then, it didn't do very well at the box office at all, and since then it's kind of been forgotten, I think, and yeah, I really like it, so I hope it gets
I read something about it that was quite interesting, so I think they'd made it thinking, sort of wanted to make a universal love story, and it was all about this sort of, you know, it's natural to be gay, so this is just like Love Story, but this is a gay version. And then I read some sort of critical response. People were saying that is an impossible thing to try and do. Anything about homosexuality will always be an argument. And it's kind of like, it sounds like the opposite of what the film was trying to do, but it was just always going to be seen at that time as an argument.
No, certainly. And the other thing I should say as well is there's lots of scenes of a gay pride march happening, and they interview, so there's a merge of documentary in it, and they interview a number of the marchers, and they're actually probably the best things in the film in some ways. They're very articulate and very passionate about gay rights, and again, that era of Gay Lib in the 70s is something that's so far gone now that it's a really good time capsule.
Fin kväll.
I had such a job finding trans love scenes that I approve of, so much against them. I mean, these aren't strict criteria, but things that can put me off. Anything where, does the other person know about know that they're trans or not, anything like that, and I'm kind of right, I can't anything where one of the protagonists is about to be murdered kind of loses its horn for me a bit. But so in the end, I was thinking, okay, something must break. And what's brilliant about Something Must Break as well is that, okay, these aren't strict criteria, but things about trans people playing trans characters. So that's something I don't need to worry about. And also having someone who's, I suppose, gender diverse director making this film about somebody who's a diversely gendered person. That's another thing also that I won't have to worry about them, because that's always the thing, isn't it? You're wondering about who's making this and why, and to have all of that just cleaned up nice. So Something Must Break, and the scene that I love is when they're first having sex, and it's under a suite given that these are two teenage punks. The premise for this is to look for ticks on each other's bodies because they've been out in the grass in the kind of, I suppose, Swedish summertime where it's light all night. So they've been lying in the grass, and so they're checking each other's bodies for ticks, and which is a really nice way into exploring each other's bodies.
Fan, tänk om jag har fått fästingar.
Kolla den.
Va?
Kolla då.
Ja, vad fan är det? De gillar att vara där.
And there isn't, there's none of the kind of the surprise at what's there, so a sweet scene, and then directly after it, you get this really sort of exuberant, some, I can't remember the music. I think it's like, some sort of fast music and running and pushing a shopping trolley or something like this, like kind of a teenage rampage afterwards. And I like the scene, and I like the whole setup of the film as well. That this is I guess it brings in a lot of things that I like in other LGBT love stories. That kind of us against the world feeling, which definitely for first love, it always feels like that. It's like, it's with, I think for anyone who's LGBT, and maybe particularly trans, but I'm not sure if it is particularly, but there's a point in your life, probably as a teenager, when you think, I think I'm mad. You feel so out of kilter with the rest of the world. You think, I must be completely crazy. And then you meet somebody, and whether it's a, romantic friendship or a love or a passion of any sort, but you meet those people that you just suddenly think, well, I'm not. There's somebody else. And it's like, then it's that us against the world thing. And that film does that beautifully. And the trouble is all from outside, and it's all from trying to sort of, there's a point as well where it's really just that point on that scene where it's all right.
When I saw the film about a year ago, and I loved it, but and it was such a radical change for the director, because I love She-Male Snails, which was made I think a year or two before, and it's very different in tone and very different in form, and much more experimental and much more, I suppose grim's the wrong word because it has certainly a celebratory element to it, but I think that is one of the most exciting directors around at the moment.
I think with that filmmaker and Something Must Break and She-Male Snails, there's a celebration of complexity and sort of ambiguity, and there's not that sort of traditional narrative drive. It's just much more kind of open and experimental. You see the edges, you see the kind of the nuances, and I think that's this new type of kind of queer cinema that's coming in. And what's so exciting about Something Must Break is that it's getting a theatrical release in the UK. I mean, it's just wonderful, isn't it? And it's not being released by a gay distributor; it's being released by a mainstream distributor. So I find that very encouraging.
The song I'm about to sing is called Missy Li's Blues. 'Cause she scratched it out my head when I was ailing.
Yes, this film is deeply problematic for LGBT audiences. But the scene that I'm going to choose is a very affecting kind of love scene between two characters in the film. Basically, the film is the story of a young African-American woman, Missy Li, and her kind of trials and tribulations in the Deep South at the end of the 20s until the end of the 40s. And her trials and tribulations dealing with racism and sexism. And the book basically is about the kind of the transformational importance of women loving women, i.e. lesbianism, which Spielberg completely writes out of the film because he wanted to get a PG rating to have a more of a family viewing. And when I watched the film in the mid-80s, I remember thinking, well, I didn't realise that it was actually about a lesbian love story as well. I was more, fixated on, the things that she was going through and all the difficulties. So basically, Seeley's played by Whoopi Goldberg. So up until that time, she was only known as a stand-up comedian. So it was a real kind of change of direction for her. And she marries a man called Mr., who's played by Danny Glover, and he has a mistress called Shug. And basically, Seeley and Shug fall in love. And through their love for each other, they basically get through, what is very painful and very difficult experiences. And the scene is the scene in a bar where Seeley's sitting down. She's got her kind of hands covered on her face because she's feeling so terrible about herself. Mr. is there, but he has his back to her because he's so angry with her. And Shug starts singing her this really, really beautiful song, saying that she's been on her mind and that she needs to kind of shake her shimmy and that she's feeling fine and she needs to kind of feel good about herself. And it's this beautiful scene. It's she's kind of walking towards her. She's wearing this red dress. She looks absolutely incredible.
Sister, you've been on my mind. Oh, sister, we're two of a kind soul. Sister, I'm keeping my eyes on you.
As she's singing, Whoopi Goldberg basically kind of opens up. She drops her hands and she kind of smiles. And because Whoopi is like such an amazing actress, she delivers it really intensely and not kind of mawkishly. But this scene is really sexually charged and very, very beautiful, and it's about the desire of two women kind of desiring each other and beginning to realise that they're falling in love with each other.
So shake your sister, 'cause her needed sub is feeling fine.
I haven't seen The Colour Purple since I was a teenager, and I was a bit of a geeky teenager and would comb the Oscar statistics and go back and watch all the films that had multi-nominations. And The Colour Purple got 11 nominations but went home with none, no Oscars, and I think holds the record for that. And I liked it when I was very young, when I was a young teenager, but when people started talking about it and the lesbianism in it, I didn't remember it. It was mild. I just didn't remember it at all. And it's only going back and watching it again that, or scenes from it again, that you see this element to it. But what I do remember very vividly is the performances of Whoopi Goldberg and Margaret Avery, who are both Oscar nominated for it, and I think they're fantastic in it. And I wish that there was more of her, of the Sugar character, because the film really comes alive when she's in it, I think.
What does Alice Walker say? Because you mentioned Pratibha Parmar's documentary.
Yes, I think at that time Alice Walker was, I think, whatever she did, she was attacked by so many different groups. I mean, when the film came out, I think she was attacked for allowing Spielberg to kind of, option the book and direct the film, because you know, lesbians attacked the film, feminists attacked the film. I mean, Bell Hooks, you know, the academic and critic, she absolutely hated the film because Spielberg had depoliticized the lesbian relationship. But I can also understand, I think, why Walker gave it to Spielberg, because she wanted that story to reach a wider, you know, audience as possible. And I was looking up about box office on that film, and, you know, for a PG-rated film in the States, it was the highest grossing box office film of that year, which was really quite amazing. So, I mean, there's obviously decisions of why she wanted to give it to him, but she was definitely attacked for that too. I don't know in hindsight, I mean, she doesn't say that in Prativa's film, in hindsight, if she'd done anything different. I think she just stuck by her choices.
When choosing a scene to choose from an LGBT film, I struggled a bit to find scenes of great happiness, particularly from older films, because it was often a kind of twisted love, like Rebecca, or a tragic love, and you've got that over and over again, or it was a perversion. Thank God things have finally changed for the better.
And also a recent film that seems to follow directly on from your natural thing is Weekend.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a love story that's universal, and that seemed to, you know, it really did that, where people were drawn to it and people could see it. And it really explored that thing of, well, it showed how far we still have to go, I suppose, with as LGBT people, how we're still, I mean, that bubble that you can watch on screen, it's sort of sizzling and passionate and thrilling, these two people against the world. Actually, the reality of that is, you know, two people who are on a station, and, you know, and gay men not being able to hold hands walking down the street still. Our kind of what's thrilling and passionate is also really rubbish as well.
Yeah, there's still kind of problems and difficulties. Yeah. But that, you know, that scene at the end of Weekend, that's going, you know, you're thinking about the film that you spoke about, the 70s film.
A Very Natural
Thing. A Very Natural Thing, you know, aping kind of love story. I mean, that could have been, you know, Weekend could have been something from Brief Encounter. And I love the way that those things are kind of bounced off and kind of, you know, but then obviously given, you know, their own context and tone.
And also that sort of, that passion and that tension of the unrequited love, or in the case of Something Must Break, you know, where it's not unrequited, but it's a kind of, you know, I suppose one person feeling embarrassed or can't be seen with the other person, that sort of stuff, or just conflicting by what they think they are and what they're doing, those sort of things. I suppose they are so highly charged. I was trying to think of kind of films outside the LGBT world or straight cinema, you know, how they have to kind of concoct all sorts of preposterous plots to get that same sort of level of, you know what I mean? So you've got to come up with these, you know, he's the Prime Minister, she's the maid, will they ever, you know, they just things, you know. Or Bonnie and Clyde, well, they've got to be such sort of, you know, to be outlaws, they really have to be outlaws, you know, whereas in the LGBT it can be too...
The drama's there already,
The drama's there already.
Yeah.